Oh yeah. Hey yo, it's the Russo Show. Hey yo, it's the Russo Show.
Hey everyone, I'm Joe Russo.
I'm Anthony Russo, and we are back with our second season of Pizza Film School.
That's right. Our first season, we covered the craft of screenwriting. We spoke to some amazing people like Taika Waititi and Pete Hammond, Bob Gale,
Christopher Marcus, and
Sylvia
Stephen
Bizio,
McFeely,
Marcus McFeely,
Josh Brolin.
Yeah. So we took a story approach to the art of filmmaking, and what Anthony and I want to do with Pizza Film School is bring the knowledge that we've gained over the years and that others in the business have gained over the years to you for free, so that you can get out there and tell your own stories. You live in an incredible time right now where you can take an iPhone and you can have iFilm and you can shoot something. No matter where you are in the world, you have access right now to tell stories in a way that impact other people and that could potentially lead to a future making stories for a living. So that's really the essence of what Pizza Film School is about.
Yeah, absolutely. And we remember that part of our lives where we were thinking about filmmaking and trying to understand it. And we were very we would seek out people who knew anything about filmmaking so that we could kind of pick their brains. And we look at this as sort of a way to continue that process with other people. Also, Joe and I have said often through the years, directing. You're very isolated as a director. You don't interface with other directors very often. So the opportunity to talk shop with another director can be very valuable because you get a perspective on what you're doing or the way other people do it. So I think this dialogue could be helpful for many reasons to us and other people, whether you're just starting your career or whether you are mid-stride, so to speak.
Yeah, there's no director's handbook. I remember that when we first got in the business, that we would call other directors that we admired and just literally call their assistants and say, hey, can we come watch you on set for a day? And that was, I think, the most valuable thing we've done in our careers. And we spent maybe a year doing this on and off, getting to see other directors, hanging out with them, watching their process, stealing from their process, things that were, we never thought of were really efficient. Our first film, we shot in Cleveland, Ohio with zero connection to the film business. I mean, we were both students at the time and really had no access to Hollywood. We didn't know anything about it outside of just watching movies at a local cinematheque. And so we had to teach ourselves everything. We literally bought some books on, filmmaking and read them and really didn't know what we were doing when we made our first film. And so we discovered a process and we had to create a process.
Even back then, it's hard to imagine a time like this now because everybody's got a filmmaking tool in their pocket. But, back then, before anything digital, this is over 25 years ago, there weren't a lot of people. We were in Cleveland. There weren't a lot of people making movies there. So we did the same thing at that time. We would basically seek out anybody in Cleveland that knew anything about filmmaking, whether it be a professor at Case Western Reserve or somebody on the West Side who would edit commercials occasionally. But it was basically anybody we could find who touched film or anything that could be a cousin of film in any way. And we would just spend time with them, sort of picking their brains, trying to understand the process. So I think it's that process of discovery that that has served us well. We sort of like to keep that flowing.
In season 1, where we focused on screenwriting and the art of story, now we're going to focus on the craft of directing. And what we're going to do every episode, and we're going to start with ourselves, is we're just going to take you through the process of making a movie as a director. From inception all the way to screen, everything that you have to deal with as a director along the way. And we'll expose our process, hopefully as a learning tool, and it's a process that we've developed over the last 30 years, from knowing nothing about films to working on movies with extreme budgets. What's exciting about that for us, like we said, is that we get to share things that we've learned, and hopefully those things can help accelerate your advancement as a storyteller.
We used to get this question often, like when we were promoting Endgame or Infinity War. People would ask us, so what's it like directing at this scale? What does it do to your process? How does it change your process? And Joe and I would think about it, we're like, I don't know that it really does. It's kind of the same process we go through. no matter what the scale of film is, it's all a process of simply like, you know, sort of being motivated to tell a story, dreaming up how you want to tell it, and then sort of figuring out how to do that.
I've thought about this a lot. If you try to distill down, like, what is a unifying principle for directing, right? I think ultimately, no matter what you're doing, biggest movie, smallest movie, TV, film, comedy, drama, you're essentially pointing a camera at an actor and you're trying to get emotional truth out of them. Whether they're wearing like a ridiculous superhero outfit or they're one of the blues, right? At the essence of what you're trying to accomplish is to get emotional truth. Comedy is funny because it's emotionally true and it's biting and it says things about life that, you know, people don't traditionally say out loud. That's why, you know, that's what we love about comedy. Drama, you know, you're trying to get emotional truth, right? That's what makes it impactful. That's why you care. Is that, you know, something emotionally true is happening in front of the lens. So that is essentially to us what directing is about. No matter what it is that we're doing, that's the one unifying principle. But let's go back and talk about our first movie, Pieces, which we made. We started filming in 1994.
Yeah, but before we do that, we may want to acknowledge our pizza.
Oh, that's right.
So this pizza today is from a favorite pizzeria of ours called Superfine in Los Angeles. It's in the neighborhood of our offices.
Hopefully you've got some pizza at home. You can eat along with us, mangia bene. But I love pepperoni cups are my favorite. Like that is the, you can't make a great slice of pizza without pepperoni cups. So. Also, we should let everybody know that we're here at our offices at AGBO. AGBO is a company Anthony and I started a few years back. We call it a Storytellers Collective. I mean, this is really an artist-run company that's here to support artists and stories on the biggest scale. We like telling global stories that impact people all over the world. We're very grateful for the trajectory that our careers have taken, and you know, we know that without other people holding the door open for us, we wouldn't be where we are today. And this is AGBO's a giant thank you.
I hope my chewing didn't interfere.
I don't think so. I mean,
saying,
you know, that's what happens when you skip breakfast.
I'm hungry, and everybody knows when you work with us, like when the Russos are hungry, you have to feed them because we become useless otherwise. So.
Mm-hmm. And we should introduce one of our producers, Sarah. You know, bring in a napkin for us behind the camera.
Sarah. Thank you.
It's my daughter, Sophia. Everything's a family business. So let's talk about Pieces. Yeah. Let's go through like the directing process for Pieces.
We were just thinking about, I think what we did was we basically married our relationship to what we loved about movies. So we ended up writing, genre. We ended up writing a story about three brothers.
Ciao, Bella.
Who were running a hair salon because our favorite uncle of ours, had a hair salon, and we knew it was accessible to us.
We're like, all right, that's a location we can use. Let's write a story around it.
Yeah, and we had spent a lot of time there growing up, so it was familiar to us.
A lot of colorful characters that came in and out of the place.
What is my fucking problem? What is your fucking problem?
Yeah, it was sort of a very entertaining place, and our uncle was such a big supporter of ours and so kind, we knew that he would allow us to use his place of business. Basically what would happen is he would close up for the day, we would move in, shoot all night until they had to come in the morning, and then we'd move out and he'd come in and conduct his normal day of business. But we wrote this story about three
brothers,
criminally inclined brothers who ran this salon. I think, again, it was metaphoric for like us in our lives and sort of trying to figure out as young people where you have a little bit of a punk rock attitude toward life and a riotous attitude toward life. We sort of found our way in with a story about crime.
Right. And these characters had a Maltese Falcon, right? They had this list that a client or that a competitor had that was a list of clients that if they could steal from this competitor, this could
change their lives,
alter the direction,
save their business,
alter the direction of their lives and save the business. And so the movie's loosely about, you know, them trying to acquire this list and all the ridiculous things that they do along the way to get it.
You bled on it? You bled on the thing?
So let's talk a little bit, let's like set the stage, right, for our journey as filmmakers. I mean, we started off in Cleveland, Ohio, we grew up there. It was a politically tumultuous time in the city. Anth was born in 70, I was born in 71. By the end of the decade, the city will have gone bankrupt, right? It was 79, I think it went bankrupt.
Yeah.
The river caught on fire, mayor's hair caught on fire, was sort of a national joke.
It was a tough, it was a tough time because, Cleveland had a very heavily industrial economy, and America's industrial base was collapsing at the time. So cities like Cleveland were just, neighborhoods were emptying out.
This was a hard luck town. This was a place that, people didn't escape from. This was a place that, you kind of grew up expecting the worst from everything. You were an underdog, you were blue collar, and you were from a city that felt like it was going nowhere at the time.
High drama. And we always say, again, part of the way the Clevelanders dealt with that kind of high drama was to develop a sense of humor about it, a self-awareness of it.
And our sense of humor was very fatalistic. And we had a very existential point of view on life. One of our escapes was going to a local cinematheque. It was the Cleveland Cinematheque. If we first fell into movies, the way that most people do through popular cinema, big films like Apocalypse Now and The Godfather and Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back. We told that story about sitting in a theater watching Empire Strikes Back, back to back to back to back, over the course of a day when we were kids. We started shifting as we got into our teen years into foreign cinema, right? We sort of discovered that through this Cinematheque, and a really big influence on us, because I think we related to the sense of fatalism, was the French New Wave, right? Truffaut in particular, who had this ability to merge the absurd with the earnest in a way that, tickled our fancy, made us laugh.
Ah, laisse, il en a pas besoin. Je vais lui montrer. Bah, c'est que tu l'as. Il n'est peut-être pas certain. D'accord, fais-lui voir.
We were film junkies and pop culture junkies, and we would consume a massive amount of narrative through film, through television, etc., through music. And that, when you consume that level of material, you start to become very familiar with the tropes and patterns that exist within those materials. And there, having a self-awareness about that was very appealing to us, because I think we were starting to develop a self-awareness of the artifice of filmmaking and storytelling and narrative.
We'll talk a little bit about our influences outside of movies, right? Played Dungeons and Dragons. We used to collect figurines and paint, these Dungeons and Dragons figurines. Read Lord of the Rings multiple times. We would race home from school to watch imported, cartoon shows, anime, Battle of the Planets. My mom used to come in and yell at me. She'd catch me at 2 in the morning watching reruns of Dobie Gillis. We just would consume content.
We would save our quarters to go up to the record store and buy vinyl and bring it home and get into the basement and turn the stereo all the way up and jump off whatever we could jump off of.
Cleveland was the home of rock and roll. We would go to the arcade from 10 a.m. till 5 p.m. with a roll of quarters and find a way to stretch that out over the course of the day. So,
coupled with off that, it's a little off point, but I think it sort of dovetailed with all that, was that we grew up in sort of an old school classic Italian-American family, where everybody would gather every Sunday, tons of cousins, aunts, uncles, etc. You'd sit around a big table and tell stories for hours and hours all Sunday afternoon while you ate. So I think that was also very formative to us, the idea of narrative on a personal level, on a family level, that had to do with the history of your family, the process of your family coming to this country from another country, and sort of all the drama and struggle that's associated with that. When you're coming from poverty in another country, you're driven to leave that country to look for a better life.
And ensemble storytelling, right? This is where colorful characters came from. Everyone in our life was a colorful character. Cleveland was filled with colorful characters.
And there was an idea of a collective struggle. So I think that's what you're referencing with ensemble storytelling. We really thought about sort of the variety of points of view that are involved in a sort of a common struggle or a common narrative.
We're giving you a sense of our backstory so you understand our taste and where our tone comes from. I would argue that, that the most singular defining characteristic of a director is how they handle tone. I think tone is a fingerprint for directors, right? It's a way that you can identify. David Lynch has a very distinctive fingerprint, right? His tone is incredibly distinctive. Truffaut has a very distinctive fingerprint. And so tone is really important to us. And the way that, we consider ourselves and have over the years as mad scientists in a laboratory taking, little beakers filled with chemicals and pouring them back and forth, trying to not blow ourselves up, and trying to create very strange tones that fit who we are and fit our experience of growing up and all of the things that come together in that stew of who we are as human beings. And our first movie, Pieces, was really, I think, really indicative and really representative of who we are as people and how we feel about films. There's a love-hate for us with movies. I mean, something interesting about coming from Cleveland where, we appreciated getting lost in films, but at the same time, I think we hated the church of movies. I think, just as like blue-collar underdog kids, there was like a sanctimony about, something sanctimonious about movies that we hated at the same time that we wanted to tear down. And I think, again, that's why we were attracted to the French New Wave, is because they were taking the piss out of it. They were flipping it on its head, but they were doing it at this extremely high level with very, competent, world-class filmmaking. And the stories that they chose to tell, were so aggressive, and the execution was beautiful, and then they would just make it absurd and take the piss out of it at the same time. And I think that's what inspired Pieces, which is a very riotous movie that deconstructs genre. It was totally absurd.
Sounds like something.
Had some moments of real intense emotion, but overall was completely ridiculous. And we spent most of that shoot laughing.
We had both gone to undergraduate school. Joe was pursuing a drama degree, a graduate drama degree at Case Western Reserve in Cleveland. I was a little bit unsure about what I wanted to do. I was working construction for a while. I had a brief stint in law school. This was right in the wake of a movie called El Mariachi. So Steven Soderbergh in 1989 kind of kicked off this phenomenon called Sundance, the Sundance Film Festival, with his movie Sex, Lies, and Videotape.
Why don't you let me tape you?
Doing what?
Where a pattern was created where people would make small, independently made films from around the country, bring them to Park City, Utah, and some movie would get minted and receive some sort of release.
New filmmaker would come out of nowhere, right? Like this
Yeah.
was the first time this had happened. Steven made a artful, new wave style film in Sex, Lies, and Videotape, and that was explosive, right? Now it was suddenly becoming mainstream and popular to watch that kind of content, right?
Yeah, one of the movies that followed Sex, Lies, and Videotape was a movie called El Mariachi by Robert Rodriguez. And Rodriguez had written a book about how he made the film. And again, he made it on an extremely low budget, do it yourself. And he claimed that he had made the movie for $7,000 in the book. And when Joe and I realized that, it was the first time it ever occurred to us. Again, this sounds strange coming from 2021. But at the time, when you had to use film and film cameras and film editing equipment,
It was all very expensive.
None of this existed at home. It was very expensive, labor-intensive way to work. The idea that you can make a movie for $7,000 was like a revelation to us. So all of a sudden it felt like, well, perhaps we can cobble together $7,000 and figure out how to make a movie. We love movies. Maybe this is something we should try. So at that point, we started writing together.
Now, what was fascinating at the time, and I think why it's important to talk about Pieces, because Pieces is accessible to you, right? It is a film, even though we never released it, it is a film we made for $35,000 that led to where we are today, right? And it was something that we put a lot of hard work and blood and sweat into, that our family supported and put a lot of blood and sweat into. We found friends to play roles in it, and we made this film, and this is what led to our discovery at a film festival called Slamdance, which is a competitor to Sundance. Steven Soderbergh, I think, had ended up falling out with Sundance at the time, and now he was premiering a movie at Slamdance. Somebody said, he said to one of the festival organizers, "What movie should I see while I'm here?" And they said, "You should check out Pieces." And he saw it, and he loved it, and he called us after, and I think you can go to our Wikipedia page and get the story. But what's important about this is it's accessible.
I mean, just to give a little bit of an overview, it took us about 3 years to make Pieces. It was a very involved process. that there was a lot of stopping and starting, because at the end of the day, it ended up taking us considerably more than $7,000. So we continually ran out of money and had to stop and go work other jobs for a while.
And
then
we're
start back up
committed, if
again.
it didn't work, we're committed to just going bankrupt. And we're young enough in our lives where we thought, well, so we go bankrupt and we start over. But that was the risk we took.
Yeah, and one of the great benefits, I think, of taking so long to make that movie and making it the way we did with very little money was we had to do a lot of things ourselves. Now, we had help, of course. We had great help, and we had people to learn from, but we had to do a lot of the grunt work ourselves. And the initial sort of work we had to do was the screenplay, right? So we started to sit down, and we were like, I think for a while we might have just started spewing stuff out.
I shit in you. I shit in you? What are you reading, a fucking script?
We were kind of trying to find a form for what we were going to do. So we basically, this is pre-internet, so we were going to the library, going to bookstores and buying books or taking books out on the craft of screenwriting.
Yeah, and screenwriting is very difficult. It requires an intense amount of discipline. At the time, I think, because we were so riotous, we were eschewing or we were rejecting structure, right? So we conformed to it at times and then completely subverted it at other times. And it's hard to talk about a movie that nobody's seen, but trust us, it was a completely insane film.
Jesus Christ, I gotta get out of here. What? Hide me. What? Jesus Christ, the cops.
Only Steven Soderbergh would love this movie, and in fact, only Steven Soderbergh did love the movie. We had a lot of walkouts at Slam Dance, and everyone in the film business rejected us and rejected that film. And to be fair to all the gray hair we have, this was not a simple process for us, right? Like 3 years to make Pieces, 3 years to write the next script. It took us 1.5 years to get financing for Collinwood. Collinwood ended up making $300,000 at the box office. It was a total flop.
This Bellini is starting to look like a real Kapuchnik.
Luckily, we had Kevin Riley was running FX at the time, and the Cullen brothers, not the Coen brothers, but the Cullen brothers, extremely talented television writers, hired us to do a show called Lucky. Lucky turned into Arrested Development. So this was a long journey that took many years. And I remember sitting with an agent, I can't remember who it was, who told us, he goes, it is going to take every drop of blood in your body to succeed in the film business, because there are 100,000 or more other people out there trying to do exactly what you're trying to do. And they're equally as committed and willing to spend every drop of blood in their body. And so, we gratefully had this work ethic instilled in us from our grandparents and our parents. And we put an incredible amount of work into our careers. Anything we can direct and anything anyone will give us to direct, we will do it as experimentation to become better, to try different things. We'll do commercials to try new lenses, try out different crew. We'll do a drama show because we've never done one. Let's just see how it's different than comedy. And really that was how we expanded our careers as we moved forward. It was a very diligent approach that was sort of a very utilitarian kind of approach to filmmaking. It was an anti-auteur approach.
Well, I think we went through a big lesson on Pieces, our very first movie, which was, we loved that movie. We spent years making that movie. It was and we're sort of basically made it ourselves. So everything that was in that movie was exactly what we wanted it to be, or what we were capable of at the time and what we intended at the time. Now, we did things a little backwards. We went to film school, graduate film school, after we shot that film, because we were in Cleveland at the time. We didn't know, well, what do you do with a movie? Do we move to New York or LA and get jobs in the film business? How do we connect to the larger film world outside of Cleveland? Or do we go to film school? And the light bulb went off. Well, they have student loans, they have film editing equipment at film schools. Maybe we can use film schools as a tool to help us finish this movie that is taking us forever to finish and we keep running out of money for. So we did go to film school and we did finish up the movie. We spent about a year and a half or so in film school. And it was during that time, I remember one of my professors at film school, at Columbia Film School in New York, Ira Deutschman, said, he said this thing that always stuck with me. He said, movies are fully 50% art and 50% commerce. That was the first time that notion really hit me, because when we started off, we didn't become filmmakers because we wanted to make money. We became filmmakers because it was meaningful to us, and we felt like we could communicate through cinema in an effective way. It felt exciting to us. We had a passion for it. But at some point, you do have to make a living. You have to figure out how to make a living. So, we did have to start to translate this passion that we had into something that we could get paid for. Now, Pieces was a great lesson for us, because while we loved the movie, and while a filmmaker that we idolized, Steven Soderbergh, loved the movie, nobody else loved the movie. And the movie never got distributed or released. So we had this.
This began our trajectory in our careers where we made nobody money. We lost money.
For everybody.
For everybody.
We were having
until
a great
I think
time.
Marvel.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? I don't know that we'd ever made a project.
That was the
made
dirty
money.
little secret of the Russo Brothers. We used to always say, we didn't talk about this a lot, but we made Welcome to Collinwood. We
lost
made
money.
Community. We made
went off the air. After.
We made
Arrested
Happy Endings.
Development
We made
was
Arrested
gone, yeah.
Development. Now those shows were all canceled after a couple seasons. Now the reason you get canceled as a television show, again, this is kind of the old school world a little more than the new school world, but it's like you get canceled because the show is not making money. And the network can't afford to keep making the show.
As riotous or unique or interesting the concept may be, ultimately, like, it's unsustainable if nobody's watching or not enough people are watching it to justify the expense of it. Talk about some of the more specific elements of being a director and what you have to do with casting, cinematography, crewing up, location, style, costumes. There's a lot that goes into it. I mean, it's from a casting approach, right? Pieces was unique because we didn't have a lot of access. I was getting an MFA in acting at the time, so we had some access to other actors.
Where is he?
Come in.
Where is he?
Who?
Bust your fucking face.
Tell your woman to watch his mouth in my office, Lou.
Watch your mouth, Judy.
So we wrote some parts and then started, and we've done this a lot through our careers, is we started identifying who we wanted to play those parts, and then we shaped the parts to the personality of the actor, the strengths of that actor.
You shot the Russo Brothers?
They broke my cane.
You shot them?
They broke my cane.
Ah, fuck! Fuck. I said give me a fucking minute!
I mean, I think that, again, that came from this idea that we were being so familiar with the form, you only get excited by things that feel fresh to you, to feel new to you, that put you in a dangerous zone where you're thinking about, like, does this work or does this not work? Is it too far? Can we sort of find a way to make an expression here that feels surprising and shocking to an audience, but also feels emotionally grounded and true? And where is the sweet spot between those things? And we do spend a lot of time feeling out those borders and those balances. But yeah, again, on Pieces, a lot of it was about what resources did we have to make a movie. Sometimes it got very literal on that level in terms of, like, where could we set the movie? Who can we put in the movie?
What was available to us?
We used a lot of non-actors in that movie because we had to.
Right.
We needed people to work for free.
Our cousin was in it, our friend was in it, everybody was in it. When we go back and look at the film, there's like 40 family members in front of the camera and behind the camera.
All non-actors, because that was all we had available to us. Luckily, we have good friends and supportive family.
Oh yeah.